What's up guys, Asian here again with another PTS video. So no real in-game footage here, this is just sort of old Twitch footage here just to kind of show you guys what's going on. So uh, as you guys can tell from the title, this discussion is going to be less about DPS and it's going to be more about how the light and heavy attack changes are going to affect support roles, so the tanks and healers. So just a quick summary of the changes. Again, light attacks now restore resources, heavy attacks don't restore resources any longer. For those of you guys who do play support roles, you guys will recognize just how important it is for support roles to be able to sustain their primary resource. So for tanks it'd be stamina, for healers it'd obviously be magicka. So what do these changes sort of mean for tanks and healers? So basically, more or less what's happening here is tanks and healers will no longer be able to use heavy attacks in order to retain their resources any longer. They're going to basically need to light attack spam, which is not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but it is a pretty big change for support roles. Essentially, instead of having to heavy attack to restore your stamina or restore your magicka back, you're going to need to light weave. So just to kind of give you an idea of how bad well, not bad necessarily, but the difference in changes are between heavy attacks and light attacks. Basically, a heavy attack right now on live restores, depending on how much you have in tenacity, anywhere between like 2.8k stamina to 2.5k stamina on a tank. And then for healers, it returns upwards of like 4k to 5k magicka. Now, light attacks right now restore 200 stamina or magicka back, depending on the weapon you're running. So, in order for tanks to more or less get the same amount of resources back, they're going to need a light attack several times, at least half a dozen times, because each successive light attack you do does end up increasing the amount of resources you get back per light attack. So it goes 200, 400, 600, and then you keep on getting 600 if you just spam light attacks. So in order to get the equivalent of about 2.5k stamina back on a tank, basically you have to light attack 6 times in order to get that same level of stamina back. Now, they did change one of the heavy attack passives, so that way when you heavy attack you can get some resources back, but it is limited, so it's not going to be quite as good as heavy attacks currently are on live server. So with that in mind, that's definitely something you're going to want to pay very close attention to if these changes end up going live. Tanks, you're basically going to need to figure out a way to light attack a lot more often. Most tanks are already sort of light weaving to begin with, in order just to kind of keep their enchants proccing and things like that. And there are some abilities that you also want to continue to light attack in order to proc. And same thing with healers as well. A lot of healers are already used to light attacking, weaving, in order to proc their enchants and things like that. So for most endgame healers and tanks, most endgame support roles basically, these changes shouldn't be that drastic. You will see a pretty big hit in sustain, but you should be able to make the changes in order to more or less adjust. Where this is going to hurt is going to be newer tanks, newer healers, newer support roles essentially. They're going to have a much more difficult time sort of adapting to changes here than sort of already more experienced healers and tanks, more experienced support roles essentially. So you basically need to learn to light weave, and a lot of beginner tanks at the very least, they tend to more or less look at perma blocking, which is not necessarily something you want to do as a tank. And healers, they're already kind of used to heavy attacking in order to get their magicka back. So it's going to be a little bit more of a change for healers, but you should still be light weaving as a healer regardless. So basically, more or less what these changes mean for support roles is you need to be able to more or less use light weaving and pay a lot more attention to your overall sustain than it currently is on live. On live, you can just heavy attack and get a huge chunk of resources back. You can't quite do that with the new changes on the PTS. So just bear that in mind if these changes end up moving forward. There is always the chance that this is not going to move forward, as it currently is on the PTS. For example, they might make it so light attack or heavy attacks do return at least some resources back. In which case, all these changes are pretty much, uh, I should say, don't have to necessarily worry about the implications of these changes as much. But that still remains to be seen whether or not ZOS is going to take any of our feedback into consideration. But for those sort of resource support oriented roles that are already having trouble maintaining resources, this change is going to make it a little bit more difficult for you to maintain your primary resource moving forward if things don't end up changing. But that pretty much concludes it for this video. Hope you guys found this informative. Let me know support roles, uh, whether or not you guys are going to find these changes to negatively impact your playstyle. If you guys have experience with support roles on the PTS with the changes already live as is, please also let me know and make sure to let ZOS know as well, either on the official forums or through /feedback on the PT. But yeah, that concludes this video. Again, hope you guys found this informative, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.